Hello. Well, today I'm going to draw a preliminary sketch for a painting on another one of my little canvases, 15 by 15 centimetres, that I buy ready gessoed, treated, ready for painting. This one's had 3 or 4 coats of gold paint put on it already, so that you don't have to watch me and let it dry and let it dry. And today I'm going to be drawing one of my Bee and Flower drawings, and I normally do them on postcards, but I'm getting very short of the frames that I use for the postcards, and so I thought, okay, I'll use some of my little canvases, and the good thing about using a canvas rather than the postcard is that they don't have to be framed, and they do actually hang on the wall. Personally, I put a little hanger on. I'll just show you one actually. There it is. They're little square jobbies, and they screw onto here, and they hang the picture from the wall. If you hang it from you can hang it from the frame. The trouble with that is, put that back down there, is if you use a nail or a hook, it presses into the canvas and then you get this nasty bulge, and it can mark the canvas forever and ever, which is not very nice. So I try not to use those. I try and put those little hangers on. The other thing you can use is a couple of D-rings, one on each side, and string, and hang it that way. That also stops anything pressing into your canvas. So continuing with my flower, I'm doing, this one's going to be a cornflower. I've got perennial cornflowers in my garden, which is fabulous. They're green for most of the year, and they flower every year. They don't have to seed themselves. And they spread. They're wonderful. So I've got these beautiful, huge blue cornflowers that come up, and the bees absolutely love them. Very lucky to get quite a lot of bees. Well, it's not really luck. I've been gardening for wildlife for many years, growing things from seed. I have bought plants at a local nursery in the past, having learnt from some biologists or people on Twitter who are experts in insects and insect life. I've learnt that quite a lot of plants that you buy in garden centres and shops are treated with pesticides, and they may have a label on them that says they're pollinator friendly, but that's not pollinator friendly. So I try and grow things from seed now. So any plants that are here of their own accord that the bees love, and that come back every year, are a wonderful addition to the garden. Now, so I've just done that. That's my little preliminary sketch of my cornflower. I normally have on a light when I'm drawing, so I can see better. I'll just show you what happens. But because I work in gold a lot, the trouble with the light is it shines on the gold straight away, and it makes it impossible for me to see my drawing. So until I get some paint on the outlines and can see things clearly, I don't put my light on when I'm working with gold backgrounds or in gold a lot of the time. So now I will add my bee, and this one's going to be a buff-tailed bumblebee. I get loads of those in my garden. I'm probably going to turn him upside down. I'm not very good at drawing him upside down. So I can put his wings in the right place, and I am referring to one that I've done on a postcard here. That's another one of my drawings. It's waiting to be painted, that one, because they have their stripes, different colour stripes in different places depending on which bee you're painting. And I get my stripes wrong if I don't have a reference. So this one will be black, that one will be black. Yeah, so buff tails have got the orange and black, typical bumblebee colouring, and but their bottom bit is buff-tailed, because you've also got white-tailed as well, which are very, very similar. But I believe the ones that are in my garden are buff-tailed. So if I go quiet, it's because I'm used to drawing and painting on my own and in the quiet. So forgive me if I do that. I'm not used to talking on videos. I've only done, I think this is my second one, something like that. So I'm just doing the wings. I may have to rejig, because sometimes when I've done a rough first attempt, I look at it and I think, well, the wings aren't the right size, or the body's too big, or whatever. The pencil I'm using is a Derwent washable graphite, so you can kind of wash it off. It leaves a bit of a mess, to be honest, on a painted canvas. It's got a rough surface, but it's definitely a bit easier to get off than a normal graphite pencil. This one's wings are, I'm going to turn my reference picture upside down as well so I can see what I'm referring to. Okay, so this is black band up there, so I know where I've got to, and another orange band there. Dun, dun, dun. And then we've got and then another black one. So you start bringing him into his, or her. They're usually hers, aren't they? The workers, I think they're. Can't remember now which way round it is. Usually I know. In the summer, I get very into reading books about bees and reminding myself which ones I'm looking at. Bee identifying books, and yeah. But in the winter, I like painting them because it reminds me of the summer. Brightens the day up. I've actually got a nice bright sunny day today, which is probably why I started thinking of bees and drawing them. And do some little legs now. He's coming in to land on his, he or she, on the flower. So we're going to have that going forward. Like it's about to try and put its feet down. Try and make them the same size. That's not quite right. And they've also got a little antennae in the front. So one of the legs on each side is sort of hidden by the wings, and where I've got the wings at the moment, they're not back, they're hiding that set on that side. So we'll have the other ones them backwards a bit, I think. Their legs are in little sections if you look at photographs, close-up photographs of them, and if you look at them when they're landing on your plants in the garden, if you've got a garden, yeah, because they're jointed like ours, so that they can walk about and maneuver them. Yeah, that one's not too good. Need to put that round there a bit more. And I've got more of a gap here, so you'll be able to see that one a bit coming up from underneath there. think. With a very big bee. They are quite big. Quite big. I can always make my landing pad a bit bigger. So they land on quite small plants, and amazingly don't snap them. I have sparrows that land on plants, seed stalks with seeds on. I leave them there during the winter because the birds feed on them, and it's amazing to watch them. They land on things and they don't snap a lot of the time. Okay, so also when I paint this, I should be putting in, you see the little veiny patterns on the wings, and it's absolutely fascinating. I probably won't put too many in here because it just makes it a bit confusing when I come to paint, but it'll give you some idea of what I'm doing. So I'll just show you that sketch, and that's almost ready to paint. I don't think I've got anything else I want to add in there. I'll have a think about it, but next time I'm here I shall show you the painting bit. So now I'm going to paint my bee and a cornflower. I've got a selection of colours out on the table that I think I might use. Cleared some of the other stuff away to give me a bit more space. I've got a little selection of brushes that I might use. I have some favourites brush-wise, which tend to stay out on the table most of the time, but that's because I use them so often. So yeah, so we'll just get started, I think. I'm going to start with the cornflower, I think. So I like using ultramarine for cornflowers in different grades of colour. Different shades, so I shall be doing a little bit of lightening of some colours with that, a bit of white. And I also believe I'm going to want a little bit of a purple. When I look at the ones in the garden, they're not just blue. They kind of look blue, but not necessarily. Oh, and the other thing is some bits look a bit, I don't know, pinky almost. So I'm going to put out a little bit of alizarin crimson. Oh, sorry, I take that back. That's a quinacridone magenta. It's close, but not quite the same. So quinacridone magenta. I don't know if I'm saying those correctly. Sorry, just trying to get my lid on so it doesn't dry out. It's fun. Okay, so that's some colours. I have got a green available for when I start doing lower down, and when I've looked at the flowers in the garden, there's usually browns, different greens on the part that holds the flower open, the stamen and the stem. So I'm going to start with a little bit of blue, I think. If I go quiet, forgive me, it's what I'm used to doing. These are acrylic paints, so unlike when using watercolours, I don't have to worry about white space. I'm going to start with the outside edge. Just see how I get on with that. I've gone for a kind of a medium-y small brush. I've got some smaller ones which I might go for in a minute to do finer lines. At the moment I'm just doing a few shapes of the petally bits. So I'm not doing them all all the little petally bits in this colour. I'm just picking out. I may add some more later. It's kind of a bit of a try it and then see how it looks, and if you think it needs a bit more of this a particular colour, add it as and when. As I say, with acrylics you can add pale colours later, which you can't do with watercolour so much. It's less forgiving. You kind of need to leave white space and stuff, otherwise you lose it because you can't make it white again once you put another colour onto it. So that's my first little bit, and now I'm going to do a little bit of purpley colour, but I don't want it quite as dark as that. Get myself some white, lighten it. There's another one where I just mix it until I have the colour that I think I want. Difficult to say what the right colour is, it's just what feels right when you see it, especially if you're working from a photograph of something. You can kind of mix a colour and try and match it to what's in the picture, and you only really know by looking at it as you mix it, really. So I'm not following a particular photograph with this one, so I'm just doing what I remember of my perennial cornflowers. I'm using the edge of the brush rather than flat on the canvas, because the finer, slightly finer lines, by doing it this way. As I say, I could get a thinner brush, but you still have to be careful with not putting it flat on the canvas, otherwise you might get a fatter line than you intended. So it's, when you're using the brushes, it's a good idea to have a look at the shape of them. If you want to flatten them a bit, you can put them in the paint and flatten them against whatever you've got your paint on. Mine's just a cheapo plastic, unfortunately plastic, palette from a very well-known craft retailer. You can get porcelain or fine china ones of these. I've found a person that makes them, handmade ones recently, which I would have preferred, but I didn't know about them when I started doing this a few years back. They may not have been available a few years back. So I'm also going to add a little bit of a reddy tinge to it, because I've seen that in my wallflowers occasionally. Not a huge amount, quite a bit of white. That's too pink, too much white. There we go. A bit more red. Sorry, magenta. I didn't get much of that out. I might need a bit more soon as I put too much white on. That's still too pink. I think that's still too pink for me. I'm going to get a little bit more out. I don't usually use very much of this because it's quite a strong colour, but it's also quite a thick paint, as opposed to some of the others are less thick and stodgy. This one's quite a thick, stodgy one. Slightly more difficult to use. I keep washing my brush because I'm trying to stop from dumbing down the colours. I'm trying to keep the original colours to go back to in case I want to mix another version of it. Right, I'm going to try that, see how it looks. Yeah, from my memory of the flower, because it's, what month are we in? Just beginning of March now. From my memory of the wallflowers in previous years, they just have a, you know, just a touch of this here and there amongst the beautiful blues. Not a huge amount. I'm just going to put a little bit in at the moment. Kind of at the base rather than all the way up the petal. Okay, so I'm going to do a an even lighter blue. Just using one end of this ultramarine that I already mixed with a bit of white. See how that looks. Flatten that a bit. In some places I'm just sort of putting a little hint of colour so that it looks like it's behind something else. When you look at things in life, the stronger colours tend to be nearer to you, so these pale bits, I'm hoping as I go on to sort of lose into the background a bit. But to be honest with flowers, they have their colours wherever they have their colours. Taking account of light and dark and shadows. So there, I'm not particularly happy with that bit. So. All this bit. Sometimes when I've put the paint on and then it's dried, it looks a lot darker once it's dried. So another nice thing about acrylic is you can just touch it with a slightly lighter version to lighten it a bit, which is what I'm doing now. Just wanted these very dark bits a little bit paler. And I'm going to add a bit more in as well. And although the flower has a sort of a cup shape. The petals don't just, everyone isn't in one particular place. You've got lots of them, little thin bits and jostling. For the attention of the bees, I think, and any other pollinators that might be hanging around. Okay, so I think I'm going to just do a touch of white every now and then, just okay. So that's so far, just so you can see colours. Now I'm going to do the cuppy stemmy part. So this is a sap green. I have quite a variety of different greens, but when I'm doing plants I do tend to go for sap green and different shades of it, doing either slightly darker or slightly lighter using white and black, because it always makes me think of sort of leafy colours. That's why I like that one. And the other thing I've noticed about cornflowers is that they have a kind of it's a browny bit nearer to where the petally bits are. So just getting that ready, and I'm going to make some slightly different versions of them. Especially the green. Right, I'm only going to do a tiny bit of a paler brown colour. I don't need very much of either. I've got too much water on the palette there. But unfortunate. Try and brush a bit better next time. So of course while I'm mixing and doing other bits, I've got bits that are drying, so if I want to go over them with another colour without mixing in with the other colours, I should be able to. Okay, so I'm going to start with the pale colour, which is rather watery, which is not ideal. And on closer inspection of, sorry, because I've got a gold background, I can't have my bright light on, so, and also any light that's in the room is reflecting on the gold, so I do sometimes have to just lift the canvas a little bit to see what I'm doing properly. Yeah, what was I saying? I've I've noticed when I look at how these parts of the flower are formed, they seem to be, it's almost like lots of little teardrop shapes, segments that form the whole of the shape. So I'm just trying to mimic that with my painting by putting in the little teardroppy shapes. Hopefully they'll become a bit clearer as I touch them up with darker colours. Okay, so a bit too far down now. So a little bit darker now. Doing the underside of that little teardrop shape and round it. Right. So I'm going to start to change them to green as I come further down. And because they're directly under the petals, I don't think they'll be as light as that green over there. I think mainly I'll want a slightly lighter, a darker shade. So I'm just going to borrow a bit of that. And start mixing it with the brown ones. I'm actually, just for that bit over there, I'll try that a bit better. Going to add a tiny bit of brown to the green. We've got a browny green, for want of a better description. Probably lost most of my green there. Let's give it a go. Bit of a combination of too much gold through it. Okay, so now I'll go for a bit more green. And then now onto the stem. Still in there with a little bit of that. I'm still doing like little taps of paint rather than brush strokes because they always look a bit scaly rather than a smooth stem. I have to say they look a bit slightly hairy as well, to be honest. And then I'm coming further down, adding more sort of darker colour. I'm going to let that dry for a little bit because I've got rather too much paint there, too much water there. Just a bit of a nuisance. Just touch in there with a bit more green, so we've got a bit of a greeny browny colour going on. I don't have a hairdryer. Some artists have hairdryers in their studios to dry the paint as they go along, but I don't have that. So old-fashioned technique, just blow it. Try and dry some of that water a bit, which I don't know if that's worked particularly well. Stop rushing it. I'm going to go over the edge a little bit because when a picture's hanging up, you can see it from the bottom. So if someone's walking up the stairs or something, they're like, oh, before they get there. Just going to outline some of my scales on there. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for a little while before I add any of the paler green, and because of that I'm going to start doing a bit of my bee. This one is a buff-tailed bumblebee, so I've got orangey stripes and a buffy, virtually white, creamy bottom section. Which I'm going to start with these orangey bits. I try and avoid using black until right at the end, because once it's on your palette and on your brushes, it's it can and it has for me sometimes get into everything, and when you didn't actually want to make something dark, it's affected by the black. So I do try and not to have it out initially, tempting as it is. Oops, just flatten that a bit. So bees, if you've seen them up close, are very little creatures. So I'm going to do this with little tiny strokes, like hairs. Really, I think comes across in the finished painting if you use strokes that mimic what you're trying to capture. It's a little hairy creature. This may need more than one coat because obviously where I've drawn it in pencil, there's some bits going a little bit dark. So this is, I've marked them, so he's got black face, black head, a black band there and a black band there, so I'm just going to do this one also in an orangey colour. I'm not doing it at the moment, but where I've got two of the wings going slightly across the body, when I've painted the majority of the wing, I will add in a touch of the colour that's underneath, but much paler because it'll be through what's really almost a transparent wing. But I'm not doing that at the moment. I will be doing that after I've painted the rest of the wing. Okay, see if I can go back over this a bit. Okay, so the bottom, as I say, is more of a, well, the ones I've seen, creamy whitey colour, which I believe is what they mean by buff, or beige. I'm just going to nab a little bit of my pale brown to try and mix a pale buff colour for its bottom, which is almost white, really. It's off-white. Okay, so I'm just putting out a little bit of lemon yellow. I'm running out of space. I should really use these more. But, for some reason today I've started putting it all on. Excuse the little bloing, my computer's telling me something. Right, so now I'm going to do a little bit of touching in a slightly different, so yellowy colour. So by just going over again with the orangey colour, little flicks of so it's like hairs. Like that. I'm also going to add a little bit of that colour to my buff, because what I've noticed on some of the bees in my garden is they kind of have a little slightly different coloration as you get to the top of the buff part. Right, so while that's just drying a bit more, I'm just going to start popping in some paler green. Basically the light's going to be coming from somewhere in a picture. I've decided the light's going to be coming from this side, hence I've got a little bit of a catch of yellow there, and so I'm going to put a little bit of paler colour down this side. Obviously the flower is shadowing some of it, but in my imagination there's a bit of sunlight on the stem there. I'm not going to carry on down here. A little bit there. Like that. Right. So, back to the bee for a little bit. The wings. I wouldn't want to do it silver, but when I've looked at them in real life, they're almost see-through. It's almost like looking through glass, but they've got a sheen to them where the light hits them. So I tend to do my main wing colour as a kind of a really pale grey, which does involve, unfortunately, getting the white out and the black out. So I'm going to leave that white there, actually, thinking about that, and I'm going to go for my little bit of black. Not too much, you don't need much of it for anything, really. Good, there you come. And, so, just a teeny weeny dot. And lots of white, because literally I've probably got too much black even now. Just want it a really pale grey. So I'm going to need some more white, because that's true. I think that's, when it dries, it'll be darker than that. So I know that from having done them before. So I'm going to get some more white out. A big splodge of it. Barely. Grey. As I say, you could probably use a kind of a silver colour. I have got silver. I use a lot of iridescent colours in things, so But I don't want to do it with this bee. So I have a gold background, so I don't really want any other iridescent parts. I did draw some veins on one of the wings, which is probably going to turn my grey rather dark now. But it was just to give an idea when I was doing the drawing part of how that would look. So I'm going to start over on this one. Bear with, this is life going on. Sorry about that. Come on. Thank you very much. Alarm's going off all over the place. Sorry about that. Right. Carry back on with the wing. So this is just the main background. As you're watching, you'll see that I'll do colours and then I'll go over them either completely or just in part with other colours, and very often I have to let things dry beforehand because I don't want them to run into each other. And it is this bit, it's building up colours, building up shapes and perspectives. So when you look at something and there'll be a darker background and a paler as you're looking at it, that's to show some depth or shadow. When you're trying to show distance, I find that the colours in the background tend to look paler. It's almost like misty, and stronger nearer. It depends what colours you're using. I could be talking a load of rubbish, of course. It depends on the light that you've got as well. If there's a lot of sunlight, you cast bigger shadows, so you might get a more distinct, distinction between light and dark. So this second wing is a little bit behind that one, so I will be picking that out with the dreaded black later on. So this is the one where I drew some veins on, just to give an idea. I'm having trouble with my light here. Unfortunately, being in a studio at home, so limited to where my light comes from, and it's rather a rainy day today, so I haven't got much light coming through the window, which is a shame. Normally that helps. That means I get light from that way as well as coming behind me. I have tried moving my table so that it's in a different position, but unfortunately at the moment the studio is quite full of stuff, including my husband's trainer, so I don't have a lot of scope for moving it under the light, which is not helpful. I have got a bright light over my desk, but as I was saying before, it does play havoc when you've got gold in the background, and make my life harder by doing gold backgrounds. I suppose you could, if you wanted to, if you wanted to use gold, but without it stopping you putting bright lights on, you could paint the gold in afterwards. But I quite like having a nice smooth gold surface, so I do it beforehand. So just making my life more awkward, really. Anyway. You do it whichever way suits you. So the watercolour graphite pencil that I used to draw the bee, including the veins on this set of wings, washes away with water, and of course what's happening now is it's mixing into the pale grey paint and making it a little bit darker than I want. It just takes an extra layer or two really to correct it. So I just allowed it to dry a little bit while I was doing the other one of this set of wings. Also, where I've drawn it, I'm not happy with the shape of my second wing on this one, so I'm just correcting it with paint as I go, which will show up better once I start doing my outlines, which is how I do things. So yeah, you'll see I keep turning it round. So we'll do things differently. I find it hard to draw and paint certain things when they're not a certain way up or a certain way round. I think I was saying in another video, it might have been earlier in this one, that when I'm painting from a photograph, I try and pick a photograph where the animal or whatever I'm drawing is in a certain direction, because for some reason, it may be to do with being right or left-handed, I suppose, I don't know. I prefer painting things in a particular, I couldn't tell you which direction, it seems to vary a little bit, but yeah, in a certain direction, and I don't know why. So there we go. Right, so that's a bit of wing. Two sets of wings, and yeah, I think that's it for those. I am just going to have to bit with a bit more of my orange. Now let's try it a bit. A few more little strokes. Flatten it. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about being able to see the colours underneath the wings. It's particularly the orange I like to just, so I'm just going to put a little bit over here, just a tiny bit, very tiny bit, and make sure I've got a fairly dry brush, and then take a load of that grey that I've used on the wings. It's just a teeny tiny hint of the orangey colour, which would be, so that follows that body that way. It's not a huge amount of body hiding under the wing, just a little bit. Just a hint. The lovely colour underneath. Right. So now I'm gonna just have a little look and see if I'm happy with that. My little bit of buff there. Just gonna do a little bit more where the pencils. Don't have a lot of paint left there, so I'm just gonna make a tiny bit more. And that's just adding back in a little bit orangey bit. On the base of that. Okay. I'm now going to add the features for the rabbits. I may very well have to change brushes in a minute because I've got some tiny bits like the antenna, which I might need to be a little bit smaller than this, but again, because it's furry, I like to do little dabs. brush has got a little bit claggy. So he's also got little black legs. They're pretty, and they're furry as well. So don't like to do straight lines. I like to give a suggestion of the hairiness of them. Also, a bit like our elbows and knees, they're like sections. They're jointed. So the bit at the top here is wider than the bit near the bottom, and they have a little pointy bit which forms their, I don't know, footy bit. Do you call it a foot? Do you call it a foot on a bee? There's a bee called a hairy-footed bumblebee, I think it is, something like that. Anyway, so yeah, I suppose they are called feet. And I take it that one's got furry feet as well. Okay, I'm going to try and do the one on the other side. So I've got this one's legs pointing forward because he's coming in to land on the flower. Got his landing gear down. Okay, I'm just going to change over to somewhere here. Teeny tiny. Just wet it. The teeny tiny brush. It's the fine line work. If you put a lot of paint on it, it will still do thicker. But rather than dab that into a big pile of paint, I'm just putting it onto the bits that I've wiped on the side, in the hopes that I've just got a little bit, or just enough, to persuade it to go onto the canvas, because if it's too dry it won't come off the brush. And the little, I don't know, little blobby bit on the end. Always seem to be slightly blobby on the end. Right, with those. And now I'll wash that because I will need that in a little while to do the veiny bits on the wings, so I don't want it to dry and get hard and difficult to use. So at the moment I'm just going to carry on with the sections on the body. and it'll come down. Now this one, as it dries, I'm noticing little patches that I've missed. I can see the gold through. I do leave some, I suppose you could call them patches, of lighter parts, because if you watch bees, when the light's on them, it's almost like the fur's got a slight glint off of it. I have another painting called Bee on Chives, which I did from a photo that I took of a bee on a chive, funny enough. And on that one, on the photo, there's light on the head part, and yeah, it's like almost like a white spot, almost glimmering on the black fur. So again, I'm trying to do little hair strokes. I don't particularly want hair going over the wings, so I've been doing that straight along that way. Just doing my outline so I can see it a bit easier when I'm doing the inside part. Okay, so I've got some more legs as well to fill in. This one's coming out from underneath the wing, so I'm just gonna near to the wing. one here, which is one on the other side that's hidden by the wings in slightly different positions. The edge of the wing. On this side it shows. And then the back one on that side. Okay, I'll do for that. I'm just going to get the black there for now. And then go back to my little tiny brush. See if we can do some detail. As I said a little while ago, getting enough paint on the brush, wet paint on the brush, so that it will come off onto the canvas. But without having too much paint, because it's a tiny brush and you don't want a big blob. That's the whole point of using the tiny brush. It's a little bit challenging, and sometimes I sit here and I'm trying to draw a line and I have to keep going back for a bit, back for a bit more paint, and yeah, it takes a few attempts. So if you happen to feel like doing fine lines with a teeny tiny brush, that's yeah, that's something you can look forward to. If you make the paint very wet, that can cause you other problems, because when you put it on, it can just run across the canvas, and then especially with black, it's difficult to correct that once it's on there. So I find it personally better to do a little bit. So I'm going to do something a bit major here. I'm going to put some black there, wet black, and then clean some of that off my brush so I haven't got loads of it on there, just so that I know there's a wet bit of paint there. Wet, as opposed to dry paint. Okay, so let's just go back and try that again. Okay, that's a bit better. Sometimes you just have to stop and clean the brush and start again, and even if you use another brush to move some paint over so that you know it's wet paint instead of just dried onto the palette, that's sometimes it's just a good idea to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to go for it with the veins now. Yeah, just artistic license, I think they call it, don't they? Just, they're very fine and tiny, teeny tiny little, like, I think they're veins. I think it's some sort of moisture that used to keep the wings stiff and able to fly. When you watch those slow motion films of, for example, dragonflies hatching, and it takes a little while for their wings to open up and expand, and whatever it is that's pumping through those teeny tiny veins, some sort of moisture fills them out, and I'm assuming that's kind of what you've got with bees. So you can have as many or as few as you want. Really, when you look at photos of bees, a very intricate pattern, fabulous. And I don't know that they all go right to the edge, but it's your pictures, you can do it however you want. Really, it's more of a suggestion of something than exact, you know. It's not meant to be an anatomically correct painting of a bee. It's just meant to be, you know, make you think of what a bee looks like when you see one. Okay, I'm going to start on the other. Now, I did correct this from the initial drawing on this side, so I just need to be careful. I don't make the wing too thin with my outline. If you can hear that, I've got rain on the window now. Hopefully it's not too loud. Right. I'm going to turn it around to do the other ones. So I don't know if any of you watch Bob Ross, The Joy of Painting. He works in oils, and amazing the amount of work he produced is his favoured art form was landscapes. If you're not familiar with him, he's been on BBC 4 regular slots, evenings, weekdays. He's got this wonderful attitude that there's no mistakes in artwork. He says they're happy accidents, and I love that. I love that idea. So when I'm doing something like this, and one of my lines is a little bit thicker than the others, I don't think, well, it's a happy accident. Still looks like a bee wing, and try not to beat myself up for it. The idea is to give an idea of a bee wing, and I think that's the way to look at it. It doesn't give you an idea of what you're trying to do. Hopefully there aren't any bees out in this. I have seen, as I said earlier, it's March. I have seen bees. I've been visiting my winter flowering honeysuckle. Quite a few of them are queens, absolutely massive. One the other day was actually a bufftail. And some others where I'm not absolutely sure of what type they are, but lovely to see them in the sunshine, but they're not good in rain. I hope we've got somewhere to go. I do put out some bee boxes, so I've got mason bee tubes, and for the mining type bees, the ones that live in old rodent holes and holes of any kind, I leave some holes in the ground where I've had sticks and stakes for plants, in case they want to use those. There are also some that build nests in snail shells, and so I leave my empty snail shells in various places. I don't know what they particularly like. I've also got an old sparrow terrace box, which is propped so that the old, where the lid used to be on the top, now forms a slope or a ramp. And as instructed by Dave Goulson, who attracts lots of wildlife to his garden, I put some moss on the ramp, so I can't remember which type of bumblebee it is, but there's one of them that looks for that type of environment to build their nest in. Whether I'll get any takers, we shall see. do get a lot of these. There's honeybee hives that's a place near here, and I do get honeybees in my garden. I do like to also support native solitary bees and bumblebees who don't live the same way. Okay, so hopefully that rain isn't too loud for you. This is what it looks like so far. I'm pretty much certain that's finished. I think I will be having a look at it. I think I'm going to put my signature on it with my loose, maybe not the skin brush. I think I might do it with a slightly fatter brush actually. What colour shall I do my signature? Oh, decisions. Dun. Let me see. A bit of purple there. So I'll just do it down here. On most of his programs, Bob Ross, let's talk about him again. He signs his pictures. He does it in a really bright red, always, and he does it with a real flourish. Mine's not such a flourish. Mine's just a little net. Well, there you go. That's it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you'll have a go. Thanks for watching.